Hi. Well, hi everyone. I'm actually really happy to follow the panel because I'm going to be talking about one of the challenges that they've mentioned, which is how we're actually allocating this funding. My name is LauNaMu. I'm the founder of Metrics Garden Labs, and we've been exploring how to measure and evaluate impact in the Web3 space for a little over almost 2 years, a little bit over a year and a half, and definitely resonate with what Eugene and with Anke mentioned in terms of there's a lot of confusion around what actually impact means and the difference between impact and output. And one of, wrong one. This one? Let's go. And one of the ways in which we've been approaching how to generate more data so that we're actually looking at what the impact of these grants is by looking at different data sources than what we've been leveraging right now. And so we've been running an experiment in leveraging impact attestations and attestations so that we can improve data generation. We have more information to feed into how we're allocating the funding and then improve that. To set a little bit the context, one of the things that I oftentimes hear people say is, there is not enough money. I want to get a grant, but it's so difficult to get a grant. There's no money for the thing that I'm doing, and I want to give you some numbers so that we can actually put things into perspective. So between 2023 and 2024, as was presented in the State of Web3 Grants 2024 report, there was over $93 million that were allocated only by 7 ecosystems. This is putting aside the 61 million OP that Optimism delivered in 2023 and 2024, and the 50 plus million ARB that were granted in STIP and LTIP. So this is a lot of money that we're putting out there, and it's been very difficult to identify which data we're leveraging to actually understand if this funding is actually being put into good use. And this is one of the main challenges that we see in the ecosystem. We have the grant operators, and all they want, all they think of is, how do I grow my ecosystem? And they are met with this inefficient allocation of funding. It depends a lot on what are the goals that they are actually trying to achieve, how they incorporate those goals when they are designing their grants programs, and then ultimately as well, what is the data that they have to evaluate if they are giving this grant funding to the right projects that are going to generate the right outputs, but also the right impact to their ecosystems. And then what are the strategies that they are following? And what we have here and what we've identified on Metrics Garden is that this is a data problem. We don't have the data that we need to actually design the grants programs that are going to be the most efficient in achieving the goals that we want. And this data problem is broken down in several pieces. One of them is there is some data, and it's very limited. We tend to skew and focus only on quantitative data, which gives us a very partial vision of what we're actually trying to achieve, what is the outcome that we want to see on our ecosystems. And then it tends to be skewed to one source, which is usually GitHub. There are some ecosystems that have started to leverage on-chain information as well, but given that we're in this highly technical space, most of it comes down to GitHub data. And this is one of the things that I find really interesting, because when I was doing user research last year, precisely looking at what are the metrics that I could use to suggest an evaluation framework for an ecosystem, I asked some of my developer friends, like, what does a GitHub star mean for you? Each of them had a different answer. So when we're trying to create these metrics for GitHub stars equals this thing within my ecosystem, we really need to think again of how are we designing these metrics. The second one is we have a limited understanding of the product market fit of the different things that are happening in our ecosystem. This also leads for us to understand in a very limited way what are the actual needs that our builders have in the ecosystem, and therefore what are the things that we should be focused on in funding. And then the third one is, because of all of this lack of data and limited to only quantitative data, we have a lack of visibility on the value that has actually been generated to the ecosystem stakeholders, whether this is our builders or this is our or users in our ecosystem. Oops, wait, sorry. And with limited data, we're able to make limited smart decisions. And so what is it that we are looking into from Impact Garden and Metrics Garden? We want to increase the type of data and the amount of data that we have that we can leverage to make decisions. And so what we're looking at is doing that by adding standardized qualitative data into the analysis that we are generating for funding allocation. The reason why we believe that qualitative data is so important is because now we're able to put these numbers into a context. We're able to generate these metrics that are giving us more insights, not only into how many additional users did we get into our ecosystem, but how did we get them, what type of value they are generating to the ecosystem, in which context did this happen. And then also, the second one is we are able to tailor the type of information that we're generating. We are no longer just looking at data that was pre-generated that we have no idea or no control over how this was created, but we can, in a tailored way, generate information that is useful for our own grants programs and our goals. And then the last one is we're looking at interoperable data, which means that we're building this database in such a neutral way that it can be used among different decision makers and it can be shared as well between different ecosystems. And this is why we're using impact attestations and why we're leveraging attestations. So the first one is we want to make sure that this qualitative data that we are generating is captured on-chain so that it can be leveraged to whether it is automatically be used by a smart contract like called and then define if an allocation should be made. We want to make sure that this data can be leveraged in an on-chain state, which is how several of these grant programs are operating. And so the way in which the impact attestations are built is first, which is what Impact Garden does, which is the project that I've been working on, is first we leverage EAS on the back end. EAS is a multi-purpose primitive which enables us a lot of different, which allows us to do and store a lot of different data. So first, we're able to store it on-chain or off-chain. We've been storing all of this information on-chain. It gives us the ability to have multiple configurations depending on the type of privacy that we want around that data. We can include images as well. One of the things that we were exploring actually during the residency is collaborating with Gainforest, which is a regenerative project in storing information that was reported by their people on site of trees. One of the, they focus on mapping different areas. So this is one of the things that can be added into the impact attestations beyond just lines of data. Then second, which is most important, is we have data standardization, which is essential to be able to carry out analyses of the information. One of the main problems that we've had in the last years with qualitative data is that it looks very different. Everyone reports the information in a very different way. So for us, it's essential to have this data standardized so that we can actually analyze it and anyone else can verify this analysis. And the third one is that this is permissionless, it's transparent, and it is traceable. Then the second important point about how we're leveraging impact attestations is we're using the reputation of the people leaving these attestations. And there's also 3 reasons why we're doing this. The first one is this increases the value of the data. Being able to know who is generating this attestation and how relevant they are in your ecosystem gives a lot of strength to why this information should be considered in your decision-making process. Something that we're trialing out as well is we're enabling peer-to-peer attestation based on skills so that we can also create more rich social graphs to make better decisions depending on the specific topic that you're looking to fund. Second one, this enables risk reduction. One of the big problems, I'm not sure who attended the CBIL workshop, is we have a lot of CBILs going on around in the space. And it's a lot easier, though, for us to just capture all of the data and then based on the reputation of the person leaving the attestation to give a different weight to those voices that are actually relevant in our ecosystem. And this also enables social penalties for people that are lying. We're still at a stage in our ecosystem in which it's small enough that we can enforce this type of penalties if someone is trying to benefit from our grants programs. And the third one is you have a reputation that is portable, depending on what we are leveraging as the identifier for the members in your ecosystem. Whether it is that they are logging in with GitHub and leaving their scorings with GitHub, whether it is that they are logging in with a wallet or a different social media account, this is information that we can pull and leverage into the social attestations. And as I mentioned, this is what we've been working on at Impact Garden. So what we've enabled is we create standardized and on-chain qualitative data to inform the funding decisions and strategies for different grants programs. And our platform looks like this. In case we understand that projects are in different stages, not everyone has a social graph, not everyone knows who is relevant in their ecosystems or what they want to listen to when they're talking about. So we have one module in which people are able to attest in a peer-to-peer way to the different skills that they recognize in others. Then we have another module in which we ask them to rate the different projects or the different contributions that have been generated to this ecosystem. This is a very, and I'm gonna go into the exact questions a little bit more, but this is meant to be really easy. We want people to continue and go through the process so that we can generate this, which is the data that we're pulling and the metrics that we can generate from all of these different information and data points that people are generating and giving to us. And so one of the first experiments that we ran was with optimism, in which we created this very easy process for delegates and badge holders to go through and attest to the benefit that they have derived from specific governance toolings. So we asked two very simple questions. How likely are you to recommend this tool to someone else in your position? And how would you feel if this tool ceased to exist? We also included this open-ended space so that people could give us more insights into why they chose these answers. And this is the translation of these two little questions that you saw. So first, we're trying to understand, is your product something that people are actually using, or is it a necessary evil? Like, I think in the Web3 space, we found some players in the ecosystem that they are monopolies. They are the only ones that are the provider for this one thing to this ecosystem, and you just have to use it, even if it's a terrible experience. Second one, we want to understand if your product has product market fit. Is your solution actually needed? Have you found your niche? And these are two questions that we found are really relevant for ecosystems, because you want to focus on funding the intersection of those. You want to fund those projects that are actually enjoyable to your users and to your community, and that are actually needed in your ecosystem instead of wasting more resources. This experiment only ran for 2 weeks, but we're excited at the results. So we were able to generate over 700 data points from, I think it was like 50 to 60 different high context users within the Optimism ecosystem. And we also saw 3 different platforms that were leveraging our information to display it in their own platforms. This again, here also Optimism already had a basic reputation layer, and we were using Farcaster so that we could also more easily identify who was whom in the ecosystem. And the reason why this is really exciting is because this was just 2 weeks of data gathering. So we want to look and explore what does this look like if we're just running this all the time? This means a lot more data to make better decisions. So what's next for impact attestations and for what we're building at Impact Garden? We want to run more experiments and we want to generate more data. The first one is we want to, once we have more data, due to the neutrality of the data that we've been generating, we're going to be able to run more, we want to be able to run simulations. Right now, all of the people that leave an attestation have no particular weight added to their own social score, but this can be something that is trialed out. So once we have this base layer of data, we can start changing the weights that each one of these members has when they're leaving an attestation, and we can explore what would it look like if we funded only the projects that have this type of participants receiving attestations. What if we funded only that other type based on the skills, based on the reputation that they got from someone else? Just having the data gives us a lot of new opportunities. The second one is we want to make it a lot easier for people to live their attestations. We don't want people to go to a different platform. So one of the two things that we've been exploring is enabling this through a Telegram bot and a Telegram mini app, but also just embedding this experience into the websites of the projects so that we can continuously capture this data. And then the last part that we're exploring is how do we read and gather insights from all of the written information that people have been sharing. Right now, this is what the space looks like. When we were working with mechanism design in this space, we've mostly been focusing here in how we make the decisions, how people vote, who votes. But we want this to change to something like this, where we're actually first starting with the data. What is the data that we have available to make decisions? Based on this data, then who should be making decisions? What are the type of processes that we should be leveraging to make these decisions? And then even what are the type of analysis that we're going to be able to do so that we can actually improve the whole funding circle? And that's it. So this is our QR code to our platform, and this is a QR code to the Telegram group of Impact Garden. Thank you.